I was talking to some very old friends in the ashram years in Bloomington the other day. They asked me an interesting question. They said, "Do I know anybody who's actually awakened?" I had to think about it a little bit. I've definitely known people who claim to be awakened. And I'll even add myself to that list. There was a time where I claimed that I had awakened. And I think that is, in fact, real. But as I have explained over the course of the 10 years or so since that happened, more like 13, it was an awakening, but as I said, from kindergarten to first grade. So claiming this abstraction of being an awakened being may be problematic just for the claim. But I don't want to cast criticism or doubt because I really don't know. I've met people who are exceedingly wise and articulate about the spiritual journey. People like Eckhart Tolle, who I really admired and admire to this day, and who speaks with great clarity and came to his own awakening through near suicide. So the humility of that, the truth of that, that's something other than sitting under the Bo tree for 6 years, he really went through something that shattered and speaks of it with great impact for me. And in some ways changed my life in the small times that I sat in his classes, and even in the one moment where I actually sat with him privately. And I've met other people who've claimed to be awakened and who I think were in some way. And then one of them, a dear friend at that point, was bitten by a tick, got Lyme disease, ended up in a psychological ward in a hospital. Came out of it, I thought, somewhat still okay, and then became QAnon. And I've talked about this before. So I went, well, where's that journey? Where's that journey of awakening? I don't really know. But what does one imagine awakening to be? And in a certain way, it's a keystone of the spiritual journey that I will arrive at this space. And every one of you has a mind idea of what that might be. And you probably all think it feels like really good, like pure bliss. Some people describe it that way. Happiness, no more suffering. Total oceanic awareness. And I can't claim that that doesn't occur and doesn't maybe even linger and last an entire lifetime and maybe take you beyond the whole process of death and rebirth as described by Eastern mystical religions. I claim total ignorance of that. I don't know. I really don't know. Sounds great on some level. If you get there, thumbs up. But my sense of universal experience is that it somehow, at least in our manifested state, has light and dark, sunrise, sunset, positive, negative, good, bad, variations on all the above. And most of us live a life full of that complexity, full of that confusion, if you will, by the amount of input that goes into any individual life, and somehow a lack of guiding principle or clarity. So as close as I came to an awakening was, of course, forgive me, the LSD trip in the 60s, which was shattering of everything I knew and ever believed. But I do know and believe that people can come to that same kind of shattering through so many other experiences than the drug experience. On the other hand, it was extraordinary. And one of those can just be suffering of great depth. One of those can be suddenly everything changes and nothing is what it was, and your mind can't put it back together again, and you get an experience of a kind of totality that can be either be devastating and terrifying or shockingly beautiful. We're all so variable, and there's so many ways that anything could happen to any one of us, and none of us really has a complete skill set for dealing with the upheavals of human experience. But if you're lucky enough to meet a teacher along the way who can talk to you about this idea of going deeper, getting out of the superficial, going out of the chaos of the world around us, of the confusion of that, and going into a still pointedness, and can give you a mechanism, which is usually a meditative process or a teaching or a skill set that teaches you to go outside of all of this, come in and go into different places. Some people, I suppose, I don't know all the different teachings, but there's definitely the teaching that Rudy brought me, which was that there were entry points to depth. One of them was my eye, my third eye between my two physical eyes, that it was a point to a deeper understanding and awareness of the world. There's one in my throat that took me away from pure ego-centeredness, gave me a voice that was no longer personal, but bigger, because it expanded that space. So something more articulate started to emerge. Heart, which is, love for somebody other than just you and your family, but an expanded love capacity for humanity, perhaps. A navel chakra awareness of the knowing without mind and without heart, intuiting the world in a whole other way, which is a remarkable experience to suddenly feel you know how to move without being told by your brain or your heart. It's just aware. And then there's this sex chakra, which is really interesting, which is about this transformational space, because as we go through life and we change and part of us falls away, we need to be reborn. And rebirth in the material sense, in the classical sense of bringing new life into the world, is also about bringing new life into yourself. And we have to bring new life into ourselves if part of us changes enough or falls away or dies, that needs to be reborn. And the energy of that is already in place. And then, of course, there is the seat of the Kundalini, as it's called, at the base of the spine, which is a rising energy, which I also call an integrative force, because it takes all of these open spaces and aligns them, puts them together so you become, in Rudy's words, a whole person, which is absolutely, in my mind, an essential way to live in this world, because so many people live without being whole, live a very incomplete existence, and it causes a lot of suffering and a lot of difficulty. So finding this wholeness is really essential to this journey. One of the things I see when I look at people is something that goes from shallowness to depth. I see most people in the world totally unexplored, totally uninsightful. They just live the day-to-day with all of their stuff and drama and distraction and go through life, and they don't penetrate the surface of who they are. Their lives are shallow and very unsatisfying and very difficult. They can look good. And I'm really intrigued by the fact that now that I've done this meditation practice for 50 plus, almost 60 years, how little depth many people decide to really go for in their life. There's a certain level of enough or comfort or okay, I can do that, or it's too much effort, or it's not worth it, or I'm not getting there, whatever there is to people, I'm not getting it. And so there's a certain kind of stopping point of like, now I'll just live my life. And you can skate on the surface of life and even a little bit underneath it for a fair amount of time with some ease. And if you get a good job and you have a nice family and things are kind of, going along well, you can actually live a superficial life that feels good. And that's fine. and again, I hope I can sort of clarify. I'm not trying to be judgmental in any of this, because one, life is hard. The journey is hard. The ability to go deep is rare. And I don't see it in many people. And one of the things that's so extraordinary is to see people who have been, quote, meditating their whole life and having only gotten maybe 6 inches or 8 inches below the surface. Not judgmental, but I understand that that 6 inches is better than a quarter of an inch. And I understand why it's so hard to devote an entire life and a regular deepening practice into unending search for depth and content. It's really, really hard. And I understand why most people don't do it, and why they say in some teachings that waking up in this life is a very rare, almost unexpected event, to have a true awakening or enlightenment. And those of us who think about enlightenment at all often think of it as a release from the drama, a release from human suffering, a release from having to live the dark side of life, just living in the bliss of eternal being, or the oceanic awareness as opposed to the particular awareness of every moment of your life. And I can only tell you, again, one person who plays the role of a teacher, I haven't seen that, the benefit, if you will, of total endless bliss. It separates you from the community of human beings. It raises you above, perhaps, and maybe releases you from all of this. Great, if you want that. But the Buddhist tradition of the Bodhisattva coming back from that to help others is really meaningful. Because so what if you become enlightened and awakened and free of all of this? So what? Great for you. You made $1 billion and you can live in a big house. And it may be much more than that. I don't mean to diminish the awakening or enlightenment experience. But my journey, which is personal to me, and yet in some vague way universal, we're part of the same thing. And if it speaks to you, then pay attention. My universal experience is, the more awake I become, the more human I become. And the more human I become, the less my own particular suffering is the core of my experience, the more I experience something I can only call universal. Universal joy, universal pain, universal love, universal suffering. It is so massive in ways that I had never quite anticipated, that I can see why one wants to get awakened from all that, to get free of the dynamic of what it means to be human and alive, because it's not easy. It is a hard, demanding ride. The great thing I have been given in my life, and you have been given in your lives, is a teaching that will allow you to begin the deepening process. And the deepening process is also an expanding process. So you begin to encompass life in a whole other way. You begin to witness it not as a singular me and it, but as an us and a one, and a total conglomeration of experience. And that is who and what you are. You are the world. And knowing that in some way, even for a brief second, is very, very awakening. It's like the people crossing over the border and suffering and making these huge journeys, and the people dying in the Ukraine, and the people who are controlling the industries. We're not separate. We're not separate. It's not them and us. It's us. It's just this collective reality. And that reality, as we all know, is hard. So those of us who have been lucky enough to get a nice house and a nice quiet place to be, and the niceties of life, of good food on the table and all of that, we get very comfortable in that space. And that, you might think, is something like enlightenment, but that's not. It just means you're having a good ride. You got a good part of the deal for the moment. But as far as I can tell, all of this incredible journey that we are on goes toward the same place. And one of the things I'm discovering, which is really interesting, is the end of the journey experience. And the first thing that's starting to come at me, which is really powerful, is, oh, this again. Now, interestingly enough, on my LSD trip, which was, a massive overdose, and most of you know the story, the first thing that came to me was, oh, this again. But now getting old, finding myself dissolving into whatever this may be, it's familiar. Now, here's a Hollywood version of my story, which may or may not be significant, but I have this feeling, if there's such a thing as multiple lives, I don't know this for a fact, but it feels right, that my last life, I believe, ended as a Jew in a concentration camp and an old man. And what I was watching was my dissolution as a person, the interior thing of getting old, suffering, because I get how that starts to happen when the body falls apart, and then looking outside around me and seeing the world falling apart at the same time and going, it's not just me that's dying, it's everything. It's all going into chaos and darkness or death or whatever it may be. And then I think for some reason, I probably died in a concentration camp and got reborn in Detroit. Ask me, tell me what that's about. I have no idea, but and that was an interesting ride. The Detroit ride, right in the middle of World War II. Here I am with a life that's just been exquisitely beautiful. But now I am starting to experience age. I've shared this with all of you before, and I'm experiencing it as a chaotic state. With all of the spiritual awakening that has occurred over the course of my life, it's no longer a blanket condition of, oh, it's really a moment-to-moment experience of being alive in ways that I never knew before. But what I'm watching is the world is getting chaotic again in a very strange way for me. Wars starting in Europe again, and climate things. The drill. And my dissolution. I'm going, right. The end of a personal life often feels like the end of the world. And even people who have mental, like dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever, feel the same thing. The world seems to mirror us, and in a way, it's probably because it is us. We are that one way or the other. Whether it's physical material, really we are the world, or we are just interwoven with all of this. And this interior dissolution that begins to take place is really profound. And one of the reasons I kind of talk about the problem of people saying they're awakened is that having an awakening is fine until your body is in a state of pain. And especially pain that is transitory, comes and goes, unpredictable, really powerful, then gone, no predictability, no norm at all. And I know I've shared this idea with you before, but I share it again because there is something that you can do to, as best you can, ride the waves of transitional space leaning into absolute chaotic oblivion with a kind of, okay. That does not come from superficial space. You don't arrive at that kind of okay so easily. It's a deepening of yourself to be able to witness all of the Sturm und Drang of worldly chaos and internal disruption from a place of, The thing I'm learning and want to share, because I think somewhere down the road this will be meaningful to you, is getting to that is, yes, it's about going deeper, taking a breath, asking for help to surrender, all of that stuff in the big Rudy practice of opening your heart and opening your gut and kind of really feeling the magnitude of this transformational thing. But there's another element to this, and I just wanted to share it, which is the molecular side of it. the molecular side of spiritual growth. If you've ever had surgery that is cutting you open and going in and doing all this stuff and knocking you out and doing all those things, that's the big version of opening and surrender. But there is microscopic surgery, which I have been lucky. I've had both. But the microscopic surgery is you go home the same day. And it goes in through a very small channel with all sorts of little, I don't know how the doctors see the thing that needs to be fixed. And they go, choo, 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 cut that, cut Peter, done. It's really as effective and sometimes more effective than the cutting you open and doing a whole number on you. We can ourselves do microscopic surgery on ourselves. Trust me, it is not that hard. It has to do with really being quiet, if you can, and feeling into whatever it is you need to feel into. Now, in a period of chaos, you may need to look for a still point, finding a still point, and turning your attention inward, quietly breathing in, find a space that might be good for you. And one of them could be your heart chakra. If you have any practice at all, you will find there's a doorway into something very tiny that goes, and you can just touch that, just touch. And you get this moment. It may last for 5 seconds. It may last for 5 minutes. It may last for the day. But you can go into this spot and go, it's a feeling. Feeling is a kind of touch. You can go into these different parts of your being and just quietly, if you will, ask for help or just be there. Show up in a tiny, still pointed way and discover there are these molecular spaces, these deep kind of extraordinary kind of still points that work for you and will serve you. You don't have to touch the ocean. You can touch one molecule of the ocean and be comforted. Let's just say that, comforted. I've talked in this class before about the process of touch itself. Touch, as you see now, I use a lot of that in the teaching. With my fingers come together, and the touch is phenomenally powerful. I don't know why touch is that powerful, but you can all practice this. Just bring your thumb and forefinger together on one hand, both hands. Bring your hands together. This is really powerful, powerful. Just feel connections from all different parts of the body, using your hands really for touch. And one of the most potent things about touch is when you let go of the connection, when you open up from the connection, it's still there. The touch is actually expanded. You go from actual physical touch to no physical touch, and yet the feeling of touch remains. It's really potent. We all have the ability to touch ourselves and the other, each other, whoever else is there. And you can do it at any point in time. You can be sitting in a restaurant with your friends and they're going through other stuff, and you just go really quietly, like this, like under the table even. And you can suddenly change the dynamic of the relationship. You can open, you can send a touch to people. A lot of us know it through sexuality because, sexuality, you want physical touch and all of that stuff. But, if you go to pornography, if you want, you get that same idea of touch without actually having the object. And it's arousing. It's powerful. This is no different. There is touch between people that doesn't connect in a physical sense, but connects in a metaphysical sense. So you can touch the other and you can touch yourself with nothing physical happening at all. It's a kind of mental connection. It's a mental touch. It's so beautiful and so sweet. I know I've shared this with you before because it's one of the weirder things I do, but I just touch my lips like that. And it's a little bit like being kissed. It just feels like love. And it's by being kissed by anyone you want to be kissed by. And you can take it and then you can share it with others. You can kiss everyone. Kissing people is really beautiful. Loving people is really beautiful. It is a beginning of a dance that leads you to something that I would call microscopic awakening. Awakening in the millisecond. But that millisecond could go deep and it can stay. It can sit with you. Now, you may have to do this over and over because sometimes it only lasts 20 seconds and sometimes it carries you through the whole day. But I can only tell you, as the world gets more chaotic and you have really no control over the magnitude of that, as your own body-mind construct disintegrates, deteriorates, moves into its demise, you are going to be in a state of confusion, probably annoyance, disappointment, anger, God knows what will come up. Having a practice of double breath, if you will, the Rudy practice to bring yourself to a place of stillness is great practice, but I will just say one more time, you can do it with great gentility. You can just go touch. Feel the microscopic opening inside you and know that a microscopic opening into your heart is a pathway. It's enough. You don't have to have a cavernous opening to go into the depth of your being. You just need a little tiny molecule of space to go, and there it is. And it announces itself with such beauty and such tenderness and such kindness and such love and such embrace that you're shocked. You're really shocked to know that something that small and that immediate and that real is right in the core of your own being. It's really there. You're not going to know this or believe it until you do it. So it's a process of doing. Excuse me. Having sat with Rudy for 7 years and then done his practice for 50 or more years, and having in many ways moved beyond a daily practice into something I call moment-to-moment reality. This is a whole new ballgame because reality used to be large chapters. I would move through large sections. Okay, I'm going to work, I go home, we're going to go to the movies, we're going to go out to dinner, da, 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 da. At a certain point, it's what's the next second? How do I get through the next second? There's no going out to the movies. There's no movie you want to see. There's no dinner because nobody's going to cook it for you. There's nothing flows in the large chapters. It all comes down to sentences and fragments of sentences. It's a tiny little strange struggle as you move through end of life issues, and they change by the microsecond. And it's really shocking because nothing prepares you for that. Nothing. Nobody. My parents didn't talk about that. My grandparents didn't talk about that. Maybe nobody does because maybe most people never experience it. They live their whole life still caught up in, I'll go play golf, we'll watch some more TV and whatever. But my particular existential version of this is, oh my God, this is a second-to-second engagement with unfolding reality. Unfolding reality. And it is a privilege to experience that. It's not always easy, but it's a privilege because you are shocked at the changeability, at the profound changeability of your life and the collective life of everyone in the world, because our life is not the marker of what everyone is going through. Our life is part of what everyone is going through. And it is a amazing, extraordinary journey that has beauty and suffering mixed together. And you need to be able to work microscopically to start to look at it and go, okay, okay, okay. Then you get lost. Too much, oh my God, it's too hard. I don't know what to do. All your stuff comes up. And then you suddenly find the gift or the responsibility of an old practice that brings you back to, okay. And you go into the heart and you're saved. This is all within a 20-minute period. And then it goes on again and again, and it keeps happening. And you start to watch this and you realize you are being taught how to be a human being. You are taught what it means to be a human being. We don't all experience life with that kind of fragmented, maybe that's the wrong word, but tiny little pieces. We tend to see it as bigger chunks, but it gets down to tiny little pieces and they're fragmented, and yet they are all united by one thing, which is this molecular opening to stillness. To me, that's awakening. To me, that's enlightenment. It is not a constant, it is something you arrive at, or better yet, are led to every single day, every minute of every day. And I experience now, for whatever this is worth, a constant interaction with, I call it a dialogue, but often it's a monologue, with I call it my maker, my God, with the universe, with truth, with reality. It is not a passive experience. It is not occasional. It is not a Sunday morning thing. It is not a go to church thing. It is every second. And it tells me, pick that up and put it in the garbage. I'm telling you, it is tiny. It is corrective. It is empowering. It is helping every sense of your life, every moment of your life, to be lived in a sense of service and surrender. You know, again, you've heard all this before, but I was walking with Rudy down the street and there was a piece of garbage on the ground and he stooped down to pick it up and then put it in a wastebasket. And I went, Rudy, why did you do that? And he said, famously, if it's in front of you, it's yours. And trust me, what's in front of you is going to now begin to arise as you get to this particular point in your life every second. It's not going to be a through line that you have had the rest of the most recent parts of your life. It's now different. It's breaking apart. It's fragmenting. It's something else. But you can still show up in the microscopic, molecular point of awareness that just goes, and that's a gift. That, to me, is awakening. So if there's a larger permanent awakening, God bless, I hope you all find it. And if you do, give me a call. I'll be really happy to give you a big congratulations. It would be so wonderful to know that you got it. But mostly, I think what we're going to get, honestly, is the most unbelievable experience of what it means to be human. And I suspect that last millisecond, which will be molecular in its way, will be that. Okay. What to say? Any thoughts or comments, Wendy?
Thank you for that, Bruce. So if it's in front of you, it's yours. That has a ring for sure. So where is the discernment in saying no? Because in front of you is yours. Seems like mostly everything that comes in as potential challenge, is say yes or be open to it or participate or engage. So where does no fit in?
I gave a talk about it last week. I said Nancy Reagan was always say, or just say no. I'm going to just say yes. The yes is more important than the no. The no is really usually an ego-minded structure that says no. The universe speaking for you mostly will, I believe, say yes. And if it says no, it will say it and you don't have to. It will tell you, don't step in front of that train, or whatever that is that's rushing at you. There's a kind of knowing that isn't personal. It's not derived from the ego sense or from protection or from fear or anything like that. It'll arise as a kind of, nope, that's not what I do. But mostly, from my current experience, it's a lot about yes. Just saying yes. And boy, it is a challenge. it's a real challenge. And like I say, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but old age is complicated and dissolution is complicated. And it really is, it's so disconcerting because your worldview no longer coheres. Even your spiritual life is no longer the specific totality that you've been able to rely on. It's all very small and fragmented in a way, but it comes from a place that is absolutely guided and helped. And I can only tell you that from the experience of saying yes to this deep, deep thing that wants to somehow move me through the journey. And I'm so grateful to it because it's, again, I use this a lot, but it's it's my GPS. I could not navigate this planet without Blanche, for one, or my GPS. I have two sources of directionality. That's it. My brain is not that anymore. And it never was great, but now it's worse than ever. I have no clue. I'm clueless to the ride, but I have this connectivity to a thing that goes, and that's all I do. That's what I do. And we all do. We all have a connection to that. And so all I'm saying is that this practice, this Rudy practice, is a way into the heavy duty lifting and the microscopic work that's needed. And the microscopic for me has come late in life, but it's really a delivery that's really meaningful because I wouldn't be able to do the heavy lifting anymore. I have to call people to do the heavy lifting, but in my own spiritual journey, you can't call anybody to do the heavy lifting. Who am I going to call? There's nobody. So I have a very strong connection to that which does all the heavy lifting in the universe. And we all do. We all do. So call upon that force to help you moment to moment. And sometimes it literally is moment to moment. It's not an abstraction. The idea of life happens moment to moment is always like, oh yeah, right. No, it really is moment to moment. And at a certain point, do you ever appreciate that? That's what it is. You may not like it. You may not like the way it works. On the other hand, it's what you got. And as you move toward the end, as everything is taken away, all you have is what appears, and then you have to look at what appears. And what appears is like, oh, it's sunshine. Oh, it's night. Oh, there's trees out there. Oh, there's a bird. Oh, there's a piece of bread. It's down to like minuscule things, but they have real richness and real power. And you start to connect to the immediacy of the world and of life. And that is, in a way, the movement toward release from life, because it will come down to finally one moment of going, boop, cow. And if it has to be bigger than that, well, that's another class talk. Bardo state stuff. But mostly the real training is down to the molecular, really simple, and go, yeah, sure. Any other comments? George?
No, just had the radio on driving some of the Cheryl Soul, Rosemary Clooney song, written by James Taylor, The Journey of Life. And she was very old, but she was how to go through life in your life with grace, enjoying the ride, and just nothing speaking and going. And it's just related, that's a teaching.
Well, I mean, as you all know, my whole teaching, which has become resonant of everything that Buddha said and Christ said and everybody else, all the teachers, really, it's be a good guy, be a good person. It's not complicated. Enjoy to the best of your ability, and there will be moments. It's
not fun getting off.
No, it's not. And the universe is teaching me so many things right now, and a lot of them hurt, unfortunately. And I'm trying to be just the fact that I'm sitting here at all talking to you is like an unbelievable miracle on some level, because the forces at work are so intense. But I get it. I get how much I am learning about the human journey. I'm just getting it. We're all in it. It all comes together in the same way at the end. The outer and the inner start to merge in a kind of and a kind of chaos and a kind of disappointment and pain and suffering and abandonment and all of that. And yet, if you look close enough into the molecular, you will find this opening. Or you just look out at the world of suffering and you feel for the outer and you forget the person. And that's a beautiful thing. You know, you be able to forgive the world and open to the world and love the other as yourself. Boy, all those teachings are so precise and they're so real. But I can only tell you that you can hear them now as abstractions and, you know, just ideas and teachings, which is the way most people listen to this stuff. But there comes a point, and you don't want to learn this when you're 80. You just don't want to start learning this at 80. This is work. This is profound work. How do you age into oblivion and do it with grace? You know, Rosemary Clooney had it right then. You know, we really, you need the grace to just go, yes.
Bruce, I was going to add to your experience of saying yes. Last night I went to the 50th anniversary of my high school class, believe it or not. And at an older age, it's so interesting to compare yourself across your lifetime. And there were so many people that in that high school class that I would, in living then when you're insecure, where you're closed off to them and you judge them very quickly, let's say, and you say, I'm not going to relate to that person. But the experience I had last night was just phenomenal in that every single person had a gift and a lifetime and a perspective. And even back at that moment, they brought a gift from whatever walk of life they came to. And it just was an extraordinary experience of saying yes rather than saying no to every single person. And I find that's another aspect of getting older, is connecting to your entire lifetime and whatever it brought.
Thank you. Thank you. I second. Yeah. I mean, you know, and you don't want to sit in judgment. You just do not want to be in judgment. Everybody's ride is their ride. Everybody's ride is demanding, complicated. You know, not everybody sees the path. People have their own journey. The most we can do really is embrace them. Just embrace them. And that's a work. That's a spiritual practice. Embrace the other all the time. It's incredible, incredible practice. Anyone else?
Bruce,
Yes.
I just thank you so much for describing the molecular activities and just what I'm trying to say is how much pleasure I get when I just remember to do something. I think, oh, good for you, you remembered that. And they're tiny little pleasures, but they mean, I think I get as much pleasure out of that as some of the bigger events of my life that now those things, as you said, they don't seem to matter. But when I remember to change the cat dish or do something very simple, or remember even to pay a bill, I think, oh, good for you, you remembered. So thank you for making me more aware of that.
Yeah, no, it's a total gift to live life consciously, we would say. Just be conscious. It helps you to remember to take your medication. It helps you remember to wash your hands after you go to the bathroom. It helps to, all these simple little things. And you go, well, that's right. It's just, it's real. It's a conscious effort to be part of this experience, this manifested world, with awareness and positivity, if you will, or content that is available to you and others that can make life sweeter and better. It's really extraordinary. And we're all on this together, guys. And the fact that we share this is even more important than that we do it on our own. It's like a collective or part of a collective. And and just keep at it, just keep doing the simple thing. Brenda.
Yeah, hi, I never speak up, so I figured I had a question pop in. So I think one of the more troubling things about just do whatever's in front of you, at times, sometimes people have not cleaned themselves up, or they're so unconscious that you feel that when you're around them, it can be very difficult. And then you have to work twice as hard to clean yourself up after being in their presence. And, and this can have a lot to do with like family members and friends from the past and people that you've kind of feel like you've moved beyond that sort of, that consciousness, if you want to say that. And so I just wondered how you deal with that. And maybe that would be helpful.
Well, there are people you don't have to see anymore. And then if you can avoid it, you can do. There are people who will keep cropping up, and in a way, they're yours. And your job is to stay open and loving. And I have a whole litany of people. A lot of the people I know who are getting older are not getting nicer in their old age. And I have to watch so many of these things unfolding. And some of them are my own relatives, if you will. And they're hard work, as you say, but it's not that hard. And I'll tell you what I do when I am with them. I love them. That's all I do. And it is amazing. Or I show up and am present with them. I don't judge. I don't get into a dialogue with trying to change them or make them better or see it differently. I just stay present with them. And at the end of almost every conversation, and I can name very specific people here, but I won't, there's a change in the environment. Atmospherically, there's a gentility coming from them, a different person coming from them. They haven't been questioned, they haven't been brought into their normal defensiveness. I just don't go there. And as you don't take somebody on that journey and they say, oh, this isn't going to be so bad. It's not going to be judgment. It's not going to be constricted. They lighten up too, and you end up having flow. So you become the engineer of flow. And being in a state of flow is better than not. And the problem with flow is most people can't control it, but you can. So you be the engineer of showing up, being present, loving, being open, and watch what takes place. And then you don't have to be around this extraordinary constriction that is so unjoyful and unhappy in life. You never have to have that. Be present with people. I don't care who they are, because again, to use Rudy's terms, if they're in front of you, they're yours. So don't try to go, they shouldn't be here. What are you going to do? It's there. Shouldn't have happened. Or well, it happened, every day. That car shouldn't have crashed into me. I shouldn't have crashed into them. Whatever it is. Yeah, well, okay. Now what do? You deal with the reality of the moment, and you do it as brilliantly as you can, which means just take a breath, open, love, and be present.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Great. I have two screens here, so I can't see everybody. If there's anybody who wants to speak up, you just speak up, or I can't.
Bruce,
Kathy,
it's Kathy.
yeah,
Hi. I remember Rudy saying, I don't remember the exact words, but I remember him saying something about, if you're in a situation where there's tension, you're the one who's supposed to be conscious. You're the one who's supposed to open up. You're the one who's supposed to create the flow in the situation. And he said it in a number of different ways.
Yeah, but that's right. If you're a spiritual person, it's not just to get angry at life for not being spiritual or not giving you what you want.
Yeah.
It's for you to be open to the what is.
Yeah.
And it's your job. And you have a mechanism. Again, you can do the big deep breath, or you can do the molecular version.
Yeah.
You can just go in and feel this thing pop open, and you're just like, oh, okay. It's really powerful. The fact that you may have to do it 500 times a day is a little bit, that's unfortunately how it sometimes works.
Yeah. What else have we got to do?
What else have we got? It's really true. Staying open
Yeah.
is much better than shutting down and, taking forward, a bottle of whiskey or whatever else and trying to pretend it ain't there, because it is there and will be there when the whiskey bottle's empty.
Yeah.
Point. So, have we done it? Yes. Great. Okay. Thank you all so much for coming, everybody. I know this dragged on a bit, but I really wanted to get it said. So thank you. Love you all. Next week, West Coast.